Detective James Carter had always been good at his job, but this case was different. It wasn't just another missing person file, it was personal. His wife, Clara, had vanished without a trace 3 months ago. The only clues he had were fragments of her letters, written in a hurried, almost frantic hand. They spoke of a place she had discovered, a place she called the Forgotten Town. The letters mentioned an old hut deep in the woods, a place she had stumbled upon during one of her nature walks. James had dismissed it as her usual fascination with the mysterious, but now, with no other leads, he decided to follow her footsteps. The forest was dense, the air thick with the scent of pine and damp earth. After hours of searching, James finally found the hut. It was exactly as Clara had described, a crumbling, moss-covered structure hidden beneath the canopy. The door creaked open with a groan, revealing a dim interior filled with dust and decay. James stepped inside, his flashlight cutting through the darkness. The floorboards groaned under his weight as he moved toward a trapdoor hidden beneath a threadbare rug. The basement was colder, the air heavy with the scent of mildew. His flashlight flickered as he descended the stairs, revealing a narrow tunnel carved into the earth. James hesitated but pressed on, driven by a mix of desperation and hope. The tunnel led him to a vast, eerie cave, its walls glistening with moisture. At the far end, he saw a faint light. As he approached, the cave opened up into a breathtaking sight, a sprawling, abandoned city perched on the edge of a massive, still lake. The city was ancient, its buildings crumbling and overgrown with vines. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the occasional drip of water. James moved cautiously, his footsteps echoing through the empty streets. He called out Clara's name, but the only response was the faint echo of his own voice. As he neared the lake, a chill ran down his spine. The water was unnaturally still, its surface like glass. And then, it happened. The lake erupted in a violent splash as a monstrous, three-headed hydra emerged from its depths. Its scales glistened in the dim light, and its 6 eyes locked onto James. He froze, his mind screaming at him to run, but his body refused to obey. The hydra's head swayed menacingly, its forked tongues flicking out as if tasting his fear. James stumbled backward, his heart pounding in his chest. Before he could react, a strange shadow darted across the ground, moving with unnatural speed. It was formless, shifting, and it let out a series of guttural cries in a language James couldn't understand. The hydra turned its attention to the shadow, its head snapping and hissing. The two creatures clashed in a chaotic battle, the hydra's massive form writhing as it tried to catch the elusive shadow. James seized the opportunity to flee, diving into the nearest building and slamming the door shut behind him.
He crouched in the darkness, his breath coming in ragged gasps. The sounds of the battle outside were deafening, snarls, crashes, and the occasional inhuman scream. James closed his eyes, trying to block out the chaos. He didn't know how long he stayed there, but eventually, the noise subsided. The silence that followed was almost worse. Cautiously, James opened his eyes. The room was different now, smaller, darker. He was back in the hut, the musty smell of decay filling his nostrils. His heart sank as he turned and saw her. Clara. Her lifeless body lay on the floor, her face pale and still. James fell to his knees beside her, his hands trembling as he reached out to touch her cold cheek. The letters, the hut, the city, the hydra, it all felt like a nightmare, but this was real. Too real. As he sat there, grief-stricken and numb, he noticed something clutched in Clara's hand. It was a small, weathered notebook. James opened it, his eyes scanning the pages. The entries were frantic, disjointed, but they told a story of a town that shouldn't exist, of a lake that held something ancient and terrible, and of a shadow that whispered promises of power. Clara had been searching for answers, just like him. But she had found something far worse. James closed the notebook, his mind racing. He didn't have all the answers, but he knew one thing: he couldn't let whatever was out there claim anyone else. With a heavy heart, he stood, determined to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. The forest outside was silent, but James knew the darkness was watching. And it was waiting.